Hello everyone, welcome to the next lesson of One Up Coding. I'm not sure how I'm going to transition from the last lesson to this one, but we'll just do it. So this whole time, right, we've been okay, let's do a real quick recap on how to code, right? Not just like, the different pieces that go into the language, but I'm talking about how you actually go from text to actual code. So first thing you need to code is an IDE, right? We talked about this. It's an interactive development environment. It's something to type your code in. It's basically a text editor, like Notepad. And the second thing that you need, and the second thing that you need is a compiler, right? It's something to actually turn your code into zeros and ones so that your code can actually run. So now we've been using playcode.io this entire time, and playcode.io does both of those for us. It's a text editor and a compiler. But we gotta figure out how to work beyond that because hopefully you realize by now that most people don't use these tools. Right, these are mostly practice tools. So how do we actually go beyond playcode.io? Well, first we need to get those two things that I talked about, right? And the second thing, the compiler is actually it sits on what's called a server. Let me check my audio real quick. Make sure we have audio. Okay, we have audio. Okay. So okay. So the compiler sits on what's called a server, and the server. Okay, this is only for JavaScript. How JavaScript runs is it has the compiler sit on the server. So you send your code to the server, and the server runs your code, and then throws it onto your browser, so your browser can actually run your code. Now, if that doesn't make any sense, that's okay. Why don't we actually just try it out? So the first thing we need is an IDE, right? An interactive development environment. So some very common ones, right? One is called Atom, right? So I'm gonna Google this. So this is the Atom coder. You can download that. And another very common one is Sublime or Notepad or Visual Studio Code. So I'm gonna go ahead and download Atom right now. Show you guys some live action. Download. Let's pop this open. It's gonna take a while. Let's use some editing magic. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so before I finish downloading Atom, why don't I just describe it a little bit? So Atom was created by the same people that created what's called GitHub, right? And GitHub is this huge coding thing. I'm not gonna go over it too much, but so Atom was developed by them, right? It's basically a crowd developed, like a bunch of people worked on Atom, and it's what's called hackable, which means it has a bunch of customization. So it's being installed right now. I do suggest that you kind of need like a slightly better laptop to use Atom. So do we also? I got a question in the comments. Do we also need to download this? So I'm gonna give you guys a couple of options, and then you guys can pick which one you want. So again, and you don't have to pick one of the options I give you. You can totally find your own IDE. You can Google a bunch of IDEs, like what is the best IDE for X or Y situation. So Atom is on for Windows, but I think it's also on Mac. If there are a bunch of other options. If you use Linux, you can find one that's specialized for Linux. Again, Sublime Text. This is an amazing one. It's a lot lighter, as in you don't need a strong computer in order for it to run smoothly. Another one this is the most common one that I actually use, but before I used this one, I used Atom, but I switched over to this one for no real reason. It's just to follow the craze. This one's called Visual Studio Code. So these are the ones I suggest. Visual Studio Code, I guess, is the most has the most tools, right? It has a bunch of these different terminals that you can use, all this stuff. Atom is, I guess, one of the cleaner, more customizable ones, and then Sublime is the lightest one. You don't need a good computer to run Sublime. And all of these, you don't need a great computer to run them. Most of these, you just need a half good computer in order for it to run smoothly. You can run all of these on any laptop, really. They're not too bad, but these are my suggestions. Okay, so I'm gonna ignore that. Okay. So this is what Atom looks like, and I can show you what Visual Studio Code looks like. It's not too hard to download that either. You go to the link, you just click download for Windows. I'm actually gonna use, you know what? I don't like Atom. All right, I'm gonna use what I use usually. I'm gonna use Visual Studio Code. So it's the same process. You download it. I'm sorry if you accidentally downloaded Atom. Now you feel like you're not gonna use it. Oh, one. Okay, I'm back. So this is what Visual Studio Code looks like after you close the welcome page, right? So once you close the welcome page, you hop into this. So what is this? Well, you can, if you click over here, you can see your little project, your workspace, right? Your workspace is basically just a the folder that you have all your code in. So we're gonna need a bunch of things. A couple of things are really important. Some things are not as important. Why don't I just let's just start this. Okay, so this is our IDE, and we need one more thing. Okay, yeah. Before we actually start coding, we're gonna need one more thing, all right? And it's called Python. So the reason I'm using Python, the reason I'm using Python is because it's really easy to set up like a sample server using Python, right? Like a really basic server on Python. So go to the Python website, go to downloads, right? Click on downloads. You have all these releases. You can just go ahead and click on the most recent one. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm gonna click it again just for you guys' sake, and then scroll all the way down. Look for. You have a bunch of options here. I suggest that you do the executable installer. So go ahead and click on this. It'll download. I'm not gonna click on that because I already have Python installed. So the reason we're using Python. So what is Python? Python is another coding language. So we've been coding in JavaScript so far. I could do like a Python series later, but just know that Python is a different coding language. Now, why am I using it? It's because when you download Python, it comes with a bunch of tools, and I will show you guys one of those tools right now because that tool is really important. So what do we need next? Okay, so we have to figure out where we want to place our code on our computer. So I'm going to go to the File Explorer. Now, I like to put things in documents, so I'm going to go to documents. And I'm going to create a new folder, right? I'm going to call this folder, oh, hold on, give it a second. All right, I'm going to call this folder, code. All right, that's it. I'm going to open this folder, and this is where I'm going to save all of my code files, okay? All right, so we just downloaded Python. We just figured out where we're going to put our code. And what do we need now? Well, we need a couple of things. The first thing we need is an HTML file, right? So what is HTML? Well, HTML is the code that's like the most. It's basically the code that's used to make websites. So I tout that JavaScript is used to make websites, but really HTML is the main thing that you use to make websites. JavaScript is what you can do to add to websites, to add some functionality, to add animations, to add games, all these things. So HTML is the most basic part of website making. So HTML will include this bar up here where you can click on one of the buttons and it'll open something new. It's this logo right here. It's the design of this this menu over here. This is an example website. I'm just using the Python download website as an example website. So we have to set that up. So we're gonna build that first. All right. So how do you actually? I'm gonna show you guys really basic code in HTML, and you guys can do some research and see if you can add to your own website. I'm really just using HTML to I guess house the JavaScript file that we're gonna create. Okay. So you first type in this little left caret, and then you type an exclamation mark, right? Then we're gonna type in doc type. This is basically saying, hey, this is gonna be an HTML file, and you start and go. This, now that I've written this, I'm going to save this file. So I'm going to go to the top left, click File, and then Save, and then it'll show me where I want to save it. I'm going to go to Documents, find where I was going, Code, and instead of a TXT file, I'm going to save this as index.html. I'm only going to call it index.html because that's like a standard. That's what most people call it. You can call this anything you want, right? You can call this game.html. You can call it, chicken.html. You can call it anything you want. As long as it's an HTML file. So now you have to open it with HTML. This is, I guess, like a. To be completely honest, I'm not great at HTML, and I forgot what these are called. But yeah, this is like a block. I'm just going to call it a block, right? So the HTML block will house basically all of your website data, right? Now, there are two things that go to an HTML file. There's the head, right? This is basically, think of it like an actual head. It does all the thinking. It does all the setting up, the libraries, all of that stuff. And then you have the body. The body is the actual content of your website. So the head would be load this image for the Python file, right? And then the body would be actually display this image, like put it in this position. So that's the difference between the head and the body. And so you can put code in either of them, right? So here's how you would add code. You could write in script, and then and the reason I like Visual Studio Code and the reason I like Atom is they have what's called an autocomplete, right? So if I I guess I didn't explain this enough, but autocomplete is basically if you know, the IDE can tell what you want to write, and it'll finish it for you. So whenever in HTML you have like this opening block where you have a caret, the name of the type of block you're doing, right? So again, these are like this is the type of block I'm choosing. It's an HTML block. This is the head block, the header block. This is the script block, and they all have different purposes, and they don't all have their own like little functionality. You also have to have the closing block, which is the same thing but with this little backslash over here, okay? Or yeah, I think it's a backslash. Okay, and so if you have one of these script blocks, you can actually put JavaScript code in here. So you can say let's name equal Luke, right? That's me. Semicolon, and then console.log name. This is very basic code. I hope you guys remember. Excuse me. Okay, now how else? So it would be really annoying if we had to throw all of our code in here, right? So how do we actually include another file that contains code in it? So you can click New File, and I'm gonna just save this immediately. Go up here, click Save. I could press Control S, and in the same file, instead of calling it .txt, I'm gonna call it script.js. Again, you can call it anything you want. .js. JS means it's a JavaScript file. So now our IDE knows that we're coding in JavaScript. So now I can do let num equal 5, right? And then num plus equals 2. I'm adding 2 to the number, and then console.log num. Okay. So this is another basic JavaScript file. This is what we would put in our play code code, right? Or this is where we would put our play code code. So how do we include this file in our actual code? How would we actually do that? Well, here's how you do that. You would go down here and then you would type in script, and instead of finishing it with the other caret, you can actually link a source to it, right? So type in source equals, and because they're in the same folder, I can just go ahead and type the name of the file, script.js. If you put it inside of a folder, right, you have a folder inside of this folder, right, inside of the code folder. Let me just pop in here. If you had a folder inside of here with a bunch of code, I'm not going to create any folder, and then you name that folder more code, then you would type in slash more code slash script.js. So excuse me, you can create a bunch of folders, and then like a whole tree diagram of folders, and then you just type in a bunch of slashes in order to get from folder to folder. Okay, source, right? You have your source, and then you just close it off, and then again, Visual Studio Code automatically finishes for you. Now, if it doesn't finish for you, it's probably because you don't have a certain extension installed, right? So what are extensions? So you can go click on here, and look, I already have a couple enabled. So I already have the JavaScript code snippets extension enabled. So if you look up JavaScript, you get a list of extensions here. I just took the first one and I installed it, right? I clicked install. Now my only options are disable and uninstall. And you have all these extensions that will basically add to your IDE. This is the customization part, where you can get all the tools necessary for coding to be a little bit easier, right? Okay, so we have the source. Now we have the source. No, okay, we just coded, but how do we actually run it now? How do we use the compiler and actually run this code? Let me show you right here. So remember how we downloaded Python earlier? I want you to go to the project folder that you have in Windows Explorer, or in I'm not actually sure how to do this on Mac. You might have to do some Googling, but in Windows, if you click on this search bar and just delete it and then type in CMD, you'll actually open the command prompt in the directory of that folder. So what is the command prompt? Well, it like it sounds, it allows you to run commands, right? Now, the command you run will depend on what folder you're in. Right now, we're in the code folder, and you can tell because the last thing is code. How do we change between folders? If you type in cd ... you move up a folder. Now we're in the documents folder. So, and how do you go back? If you type in cd and the name of the folder you want to go to, code, then you go back into that folder. So go into the folder of your project, right? So this is our project folder. It's our workspace. It has the HTML and JavaScript file. Now go ahead and type in. Well, okay, hold on. Before we do anything, one way to run your code is to just click on the HTML file, and then you might get some options. Do you want to run this with code? I'm gonna click OK. Chrome. I'm gonna click OK, and nothing happens here because we can't look at the console yet. Okay, so this is one way. I'll show you a better way. This basically runs a very, very temporary server on your own laptop, on your own computer, at this very file location. So this is one way to run your code, and it totally works, but I'll show you a better way. So how do we actually open the console in here? Well, if you press Control-Shift-I on Windows, I'm not sure what it is for Mac. Basically, go ahead, right-click, and look for Inspect, right? Inspect and click on console up here. You'll notice, hey, we printed the name, which is what we wanted our code to do. If you look here, we have the name, we printed it, and then we looked at the next line, and then we included this file, which runs and prints num. We get 7, right? So this is cool, right? And if you edit your code, right? Like let's say we want to change this to 6, I'm gonna save that. You can refresh the page, and the console will stay open and everything would have changed, right? So this is one way to run your code. You click on the file. But later on, when I show you guys some more tools and tips and stuff, you'll notice that this doesn't always work. So what's the better way to run your JavaScript files? The better way is hop back in here, hop back to the command prompt. Because we downloaded Python, we can use this Python tool. And you're going to have to remember this command a little. But type in python-m http.server. This basically has Python build like a temporary server for you. So press enter, and okay. So we're at the next step. All right, now you can read it here. It's currently serving HTTP. HTTP it stands for something like something transfer protocol. Basically, it's like the rules of the internet. Or like it's the rules of the internet, and it's this huge thing. So basically it's serving a server with those rules on this port right now. So how do you access this port? You might be tempted to type this into your browser and go to it, but that's not actually how you do it. How you do it is you type you type in on any browser, on any whatever. I'm gonna use Google Chrome because that's just what I'm used to. Type in localhost and then the colon and the 8000, okay? So how do servers work? Well, a server, think of it like an airport, right? So an airport has terminals, right? You can't just have all the planes fly in at random locations. You want them to fly in at certain locations, right? And like a certain designated location. So if you type in, just like in that case, servers have ports. Ports are like terminals. The terminal 8000 is the one that you can access your files on. So I'm gonna go here, let it load for a bit. Back, okay. So I did a bunch of stuff, but I basically restarted my server. So yeah, I basically okay, don't ignore all that. I'm gonna scroll that. Okay, I had to restart the server. For some reason, it wasn't working the first time. Okay, so and you can see if you hop in the terminal, it's instead of that huge long directory line, that huge long address, you just get localhost 8000, and it ran the code in the console, as you can see. And so you see this is a connection. This get connection right here. This is basically you loading your code onto the server. And if you refresh, you'll notice that you send another get request, right? And the get request is getting your files, right? So it gets your files, script.js, and then it throws on the server. So we're gonna be using this from now on. Oh, okay. I'm gonna show you guys one more thing, and then we're gonna hop off. Okay. So the last thing I need to show you is Node.js. So we've been coding in this browser-esque thing with this whole HTML file. But what if you wanted to just compile JavaScript without the server, without the HTML file? Well, then you would want to get Node.js. So go ahead and look for Node.js. I'm gonna get it's called LTS. It's called long-term support. It's the one that's the most stable, right? You could totally get the current one. I'm just gonna get the LTS. Once you download this, I don't actually have it installed on my computer yet, so I'm gonna install it right now. But so this helps you run your JavaScript code without any visuals, without an HTML file, without having to put it on the browser. This is totally separate. This is like coding in like Java or Python, where it's totally not connected to websites at all. So, but you can use Node.js for stuff like backend and like databases and like bots, and I'll show you guys that very soon. That's what we're gonna be working on. I'm gonna install this. You guys can install it on your own. That's basically it. Or actually, let's just. Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. While this loads, I'm signing off. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next lesson.